When it comes to analysing the actual real data on homicides and what's happening in reality, there's one story that those on the political left who base everything on the identity politics of gender and race and sexuality never want to discuss. Blaming men for all things bad in the world is very handy and quite socially acceptable these days. You'll get applauded if you criticise old white guys. But as we've shown, the data just doesn't stack up for the current wave of man hatred in Australia. But I'm afraid that reality is even worse for those to whom everything that isn't male or white or old or Christian or straight is holy. Tragically, and this is not something that I'm celebrating in any way, folks, it is tragic, there were 49 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander victims of homicide in 2022-23, according to the Institute of Criminology report. That makes up 20% of all the murder victims in the country. That's a much bigger percentage than the 4% of the population that ATSI people actually represent. In 2022-23, the homicide victimisation rate for Indigenous Australians was 5.36 per 100,000, which puts it in the same category as the US generally and Russia and PNG. Again, it's much worse for men. 2.5 times more men than women are killed. We have data on 45 of those 49 Indigenous murders from that year. Of those 45, 27 of them were men killing other men, 5 were women killing other women, and 5 were women killing men, and 8 were men killing women. Also, more than 3/4 of the murders were committed by Indigenous perpetrators. Now, all of this is a good example of how in Australia we generally only hear one side of a story. We hear the so-called progressive side. Turn on the ABC and mainstream media and you'll hear all the woes of the world laid out on any given day. And the solution never seems to lie with people taking personal responsibility. The solution also never seems to lie with conservative values, valuing the nuclear family unit, children growing up in a strong family home, people behaving modestly, people working hard, respect for men, behaving politely, controlling emotion, courage, stoicism, and heaven forbid, any traditional religion. The solution always seems to lie with more government intervention and policies that enhance the victim status of those affected, that support the great Marxist worldview of endless victims and endless oppressors. If somebody's had a bad life, there's nothing they can do about it. It's never their fault. There's some oppressor that we should be blaming, some bad person, usually a white, straight, financially secure male, is to blame. And the victim is suffering because of their race, gender, sexuality, or poverty, and, quote, the government ought to do something about it, unquote. Sorry, guys, but it is really getting tired. I've only been back in Australia 4 years, and I'm astounded at the sexism in this country against men. It is vile, entrenched, and disturbing. We can't see it because we're in it, but you ask any foreigner what their perspective is on Australia, and they'll tell you it's a man-hating nation. I'm even more amazed by how gutless so many men are about speaking back and fighting it. The demonisation of men and the double demonisation of anyone who challenges that narrative is sickening. We are in a very, very bad place on gender issues. Criminals kill people. 99.999% of men are not criminals. But you would never know it listening to the so-called feminists in this country. We also have a lot of very poorly educated people for a very rich and blessed country. People who don't understand basic statistics and math or how to properly make deductions from statistics about causality, especially our journalists and media.